In the days after 9/11, he became to be known as America's mayor. Rudy Giuliani is joining us now on this solemn day. He is the president's personal attorney and also former mayor of New York City. I got to say, Mr. Giuliani, it's an honor to talk to you today. This is a solemn day for so many across our nation, specifically for New York City as a whole. I want to ask you, sir, with 9/11 today, we remember the lives that are lost, some 3,000, close to that. But today's different, going through COVID. We're seeing this day be remembered differently. What are your thoughts on that in moving forward in remembrance, but also facing COVID at this time?
Well, you know, I can tell you that there are real differences in the reaction. The reality is, in both situations, this is a foreign attack on the United States. One was, I guess, a little easier to see because these were 19 people, 15 of whom were Saudi Arabian. They were all dedicated to Islamic extremist terrorism. They killed in the name of Islamic extremist terrorism. They were part of a terrorist organization. In fact, they're part of a group of terrorists that exists today and still wants to kill us. So September 11 is not yet consigned to history. Let's say the way Pearl Harbor is consigned to history. Pearl Harbor, terrible attack on America. Not as many deaths, actually. This entailed more deaths, but still a terrible attack. The war's over, and our enemies, our former enemies, are our friends. In this particular case, the September 11 attack by Islamic extremist terrorists is still a threat today. They're still attempting to kill Americans. They're still training to do it. And we have to be alert as we concentrate so much on the pandemic and on the riots that are going on in Democrat cities throughout the country. We have to focus on the fact that this is still a threat. So when people talk about defunding the police, I become very, very concerned because one of the things we did after September 11 that was really very, very important was we built up within our police departments anti-terrorism units. The one in New York City, for example, is probably the best, as it should be, because it's the center of their attention. And some of the cuts that have been made will very much affect our ability to deal with this threat of terrorism.
Rudy, let me ask you about that. Now that you bring that up, in the state of the city, if you will, New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio, there are a lot of things that folks disagree with him on, supporting the protests among so many other things. But one of them was not allowing the names of the victims be read aloud live, the victims of 9/11 be read aloud live. That will happen in some other form, but as far as the memorial, the official memorial goes, it'll be playback. Is that the right move? Would you have done that if you're in office right now?
It's disgraceful. He should be ashamed of himself. But he has always tried to underplay September 11 because, Democrats have always been unwilling to even use the word Islamic extremist terrorists. I mean, all during the Obama administration, you couldn't say that. And we were losing the war to that. It wasn't until President Trump came in that we finally really turned the tide. But Democrats have some kind of weakness where Islamic extremist terrorists are concerned. So I see it as part of the left-wing Democrat approach, which is to downplay the threat of Islamic extremist terrorists and probably trying to get us to forget about September 11. There's absolutely no reason why the Tower of Light couldn't go up. It doesn't cause COVID. And having people get together to read the names, they could easily be 6 feet apart. They're not going to do what Mayor de Blasio allows Black Lives Matter to do, and Joe Biden allows Black Lives Matter to do, which is to gather together with no mask, hugging, squeezing, yelling, screaming, literally spitting each other's faces for hours and hours and hours. I mean, that's okay. That's permitted. That's not going to spread COVID as far as they're concerned. But a solemn reading of the martyrs who were killed by Islamic extremist terrorists for no reason other than hatred of the United States, that is not allowed. The hypocrisy there is amazing.
Well, let me ask you about that. 19 years since September 11th in 2001. The lighting ceremony that you mentioned at some point was not going to happen. It's when they light, for those at home, it's when they light up two beams of light to represent the Twin Towers. That wasn't going to happen. Now, obviously, this is happening this evening. But your initial thoughts when you heard that was going to be canceled, I can't imagine what went through your mind.
What went through my mind is I hope our people aren't dumb enough not to realize that this has nothing at all to do with COVID. And what it has to do is downplaying dramatically the threat of Islamic extremist terrorism. They want all this forgotten, pushed under the rug. And that's why they canceled the light ceremony, which only is restored because of tremendous protest and because it's totally stupid to say that the lighting ceremony is going to cause COVID. It's also totally stupid to say the naming ceremony would cause COVID when you're allowing Black Lives Matter and groups like that to have protests with 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people, many of them with no masks on, many of them yelling and screaming in each other's faces and in the face of the police. I mean, if that's not a threat to spread COVID, how is reading the names in kind of a sacred ceremony where you could easily space people apart and make sure they're all wearing masks, how is that at all having to do with COVID? Or isn't it really part of trying to bury the memory of September 11th?
I'm curious to know what your memory is, your memory, the one that runs through your head, if not every day, perhaps on this day each year. A lot of people that I talk to in New York City, they've all faced this together, and they say this is the time where everyone was just nice to everyone on the streets during this time right after 9/11. It caused everyone in that area that was hit so hard, if you will, emotionally by that attack to come together again. What is your memory of that day? What is the one that sits with you to this day about running this city?
The one that repeats for me almost every day, if not every day, is the first time when I arrived there and I was looking up, being told by the police to keep looking up because debris was falling right near us and hitting people around us. And I saw a man on the 101st, 102nd floor trying to make the decision whether to jump out or not. And I stopped and I watched him, come all the way to the ground. And I think it was the thing that alerted me to how horrendous this was. And I grabbed the arm of the police commissioner, Bernie Carrick, and I said, Bernie, this is way over our heads. We're just going to have to do the best that we can and pray to God that we make the right decision. And from that moment on, there were 1,000 horrible experiences that I could tell you about. Probably 1,000 more that I won't tell you about because there's no reason then or now to panic people more than they should. But it was also the greatest day that I experienced because of the bravery of the firefighters and the police officers, the people who responded, the construction workers. I mean, amazing. They went right into that fire, 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and pulled people out, as many as they could. People volunteered to help. It's extraordinary, the bravery that it brought and the sense of patriotism that, remember the flag being put up. Nobody was burning a flag that day. The flag was put up by firefighters who were brave enough to stand on top of smoldering debris. And they put up a flag, and it looked very much like Iwo Jima. And as I said, nobody was burning the flag that day. People were honoring it and respecting it. And then remember how many of our dead were taken out after September 11, on and after September 11. And every time they would find a flag and they'd put it over whatever casket or box or whatever they had. And even though hundreds were taken out, and it was under circumstances of danger, it was all done with great ceremony, great pride. Nobody took a knee. Nobody burned a flag. They stood and they saluted. They put their hands next to their chest to honor their country and to honor the people that died just because they were Americans.
I got to tell you, it's emotional to hear you talk about that moment. I think you bring all of us back.
Very emotional for me. I do everything I can to contain my emotions. I did it then. It's very hard for me to go down there. I have to pass that area many, many times. I'm a New Yorker. And when I can avoid it, I go a different direction. And when I do pass it, I'm just flooded with memories. And on a day like today, it's a very, very difficult day. And I remember my good friends that I lost. Father Judge, who was the first person that was found, the first body that was found, first person reported to me as having been dead. Father Judge was, I'd say, he was my spiritual advisor. He was my close friend. Father Judge taught me how to deal with death. He was with me with my first group of 3 firefighters who died. I didn't know what to do. And Father Judge explained to me how to handle families when they're in this kind of distress. And the man was a saint. I mean, he was a beautiful man. And after September 11 happened, when right in the midst of it, when I realized how bad it was going to be, I asked my fire commission to get me Father Judge because I knew I would need him to help explain. At that time, I thought we had lost 12,000 people. And instead of telling me Father Judge was coming, he walked back a few minutes later and he said, Mayor, I don't know how to tell you this, but the first body found there was Father Judge. And his body is being carried to St. Peter's Church. And I felt like I had lost my right arm. And then I lost my left arm and with Pete Gansey. And we lost our most experienced people that day. We lost our most experienced firefighters who knew how to do search and rescue. So the people who were doing it were stepping up to a new role, which is why what they did and the way they did it, and it had to be one of the greatest recovery efforts in the history of the country, if not the greatest.
Mayor, you had to go through that, the emotional toll that you just explained to the viewers, and then you had to run the city at that time with the weight of the world on your shoulders. I say this on behalf of so many people, but my goodness, thank you for getting this city, America's greatest city, through that tragic moment. 9/11 will be remembered today and throughout the evening, and always as we remember it 19 years ago.
Well, thank you very much for remembering it. It means a lot to me and to so many of the surviving families and the ones that are still in pain.
And we thank you, sir. That is former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani and personal attorney to President Trump. Rudy, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thoughts are with you today.
Newsmax TV is now America's fastest growing cable news channel. We give you the real news you need. So subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a thumbs up. If you like this video, share it with your friends. Newsmax TV streams live on YouTube for free. Newsmax TV, real news for real people.